The financial stability of U.S. cities is under unprecedented strain. Once thriving metropolitan areas are grappling with fiscal challenges that are pushing them to the brink of bankruptcy. Why are so many U.S. cities going broke? The reasons are complex and multifaceted, from shrinking tax bases to rising pension obligations. In this analysis, we'll break down the top 10 points that explain the financial crisis hitting American cities, exploring how these factors intertwine to create a perfect storm of economic instability. Stick around as we unravel these issues and explore if there's any hope of a turnaround for America's urban centers. Before we dive in, welcome to our channel. If you enjoy this deep dive into financial and economic issues, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our latest videos. Number 10. Declining population and shrinking tax base. One of the key reasons U.S. cities are going broke is due to a declining population, which directly affects their tax base. Many cities, especially those in the Rust Belt, have seen significant population declines as industries move overseas or to other parts of the country. With fewer residents, cities collect less in property taxes, income taxes, and sales taxes, all of which are critical revenue streams. As the population dwindles, so does the financial lifeblood of these municipalities. How can a city thrive without enough people to sustain its infrastructure? As residents leave, businesses also follow, creating a vicious cycle that makes recovery even more challenging. This point underscores a significant challenge. When the tax base erodes, cities are left scrambling to cover essential services, often resorting to borrowing or slashing budgets. Number 9. Unfunded pension liabilities. Another major issue that is driving cities toward bankruptcy is their unfunded pension liabilities. Decades of promises made to public employees have caught up with many municipalities. Cities are now on the hook for billions of dollars in pensions that they cannot afford to pay. This burden has been exacerbated by poor investment returns and inadequate funding. How did these pension systems get so out of control? In many cases, cities have been underfunding pensions for years, and the consequences are now catching up. This financial strain forces cities to either cut services or raise taxes to cover pension payments. The pension crisis is a ticking time bomb, and without serious reform, it could cripple even more cities. The enormity of these obligations often leaves city governments with few options beyond bankruptcy court. Number 8. Rising healthcare costs for public employees. In addition to pensions, healthcare costs for public employees are another financial burden weighing heavily on U.S. cities. As healthcare costs continue to rise, cities are struggling to keep up with the escalating expenses of providing coverage to current employees and retirees. Can cities afford to continue offering these generous healthcare benefits? For many, the answer is increasingly no. The rising costs have led to budget deficits, forcing some cities to reduce coverage, increase employee contributions, or make cuts elsewhere in their budgets. Healthcare inflation is a nationwide issue, but it hits cities particularly hard due to their large public sector workforces. This dilemma creates a delicate balancing act between maintaining employee benefits and keeping city finances afloat. Number 7. Economic shifts and decline in manufacturing jobs. The decline of manufacturing jobs in the U.S. has left many cities, particularly in the Midwest, struggling to find new sources of economic growth. Once thriving on blue-collar jobs, these cities have seen their economies shrink as factories close-in jobs move offshore or to other regions. What happens when a city loses its economic engine? Without a strong manufacturing base, cities have struggled to reinvent themselves, leading to higher unemployment and lower wages. The loss of these jobs has a ripple effect, reducing demand for housing, retail, and services, which further depresses the local economy. The inability of many cities to diversify their economic base has left them vulnerable to financial collapse, with no easy solutions in sight. Number 6. Decreasing federal and state aid. Many U.S. cities have also been hit hard by a reduction in federal and state aid, which has historically helped municipalities balance their budgets. As federal and state governments face their own fiscal challenges, they have been cutting back on funding for cities. How can cities make up for this shortfall? Many have turned to local tax increases or borrowing, but these measures often exacerbate the problem. Without federal or state support, cities are left to fend for themselves in an increasingly difficult economic environment. This reduction in aid is particularly devastating for cities that rely on it to fund critical infrastructure projects, social services, and public safety programs. The lack of outside support has left many cities teetering on the edge of financial ruin. Number 5. Infrastructure decay and maintenance costs. The aging infrastructure of U.S. cities is another massive financial burden. Roads, bridges, water systems, and public transit networks are all in dire need of repair, but the cost of maintaining and upgrading these systems are astronomical. What happens when infrastructure starts to crumble? Cities are left with crumbling streets, water mains breaking, and public transit systems that are unsafe and unreliable. The cost to fix these problems often far exceeds what the cities can afford, leading to deferred maintenance that only makes the problems worse over time. As infrastructure decays, it also makes cities less attractive to new residents and businesses, perpetuating this cycle of decline. Number 4. Mismanagement and corruption. In some cases, financial mismanagement and corruption have played a significant role in bankrupting U.S. cities. Poor financial planning, reckless spending, and even outright theft have left some cities with insurmountable debts. How do these cities recover from such mismanagement? In many cases, they don't. Scandals involving city officials misusing funds or making bad investments have led to disastrous outcomes. While not every city is plagued by corruption, those that are often find themselves in the most dire financial situations. When public trust is eroded due to corruption, it becomes even harder for cities to raise the funds they need through taxes or bonds, compounding their financial problems. Number 3. Over-reliance on debt financing. Many cities have turned to borrowing as a way to plug budget gaps, but over-reliance on debt financing has only worsened their financial situations. Cities issue bonds to finance projects or cover operating expenses, but when they borrow too much, they risk defaulting on their debts. How long can cities continue to borrow before it catches up to them? For many, the answer is not much longer. As interest payments on debt consume more and more of city budgets, there is less money available for essential services. The problem is that cities often have no other option but to borrow, even when they know it's not sustainable. The result is a downward spiral of debt that can lead to bankruptcy. Number 2. Growing homelessness and poverty rates. Rising homelessness and poverty rates are not only social issues but also financial ones. As more people in U.S. cities fall into poverty, they rely on city services for support, from shelters to healthcare. How do cities cope with the rising demand for social services? The financial burden of supporting a growing population of homeless and impoverished residents is stretching city budgets to the breaking point. At the same time, high poverty rates reduce the tax base, further limiting the funds available to provide services. The social and financial impacts of homelessness and poverty are deeply intertwined, creating a vicious cycle that is difficult to break. Number 1. Lack of long-term planning and fiscal discipline. At the heart of many cities' financial troubles is a lack of long-term planning and fiscal discipline. Cities often focus on short-term fixes to budget problems, kicking the can down the road instead of addressing the root causes. Why is it so hard for cities to adopt long-term solutions? Political pressures, competing interests, and the sheer complexity of the problems make it difficult for cities to take the necessary steps to fix their finances. Without long-term planning, cities are doomed to repeat the same mistakes, leading to financial crises year after year. The lack of fiscal discipline is the common thread that ties many of these issues together, making it the most important factor in understanding why so many U.S. cities are going broke. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated with our latest videos.